Hello humans, it's just Martine and welcome to the final week of Realmathon. My past Realmathon vlogs will be here. It's technically Sunday night and I just closed out my last vlog, but then I decided to go a little crazy because today I read the entire webcomic for Heartstoppers, which is technically all 4 currently published volumes and then part of the next volume that's not yet published. I went in and updated everything to reflect having read all 4 volumes, even though I read it as the webcomic instead of in like the book form because it counts. And I even looked up like which parts represent like which books. Anyway, I just want to quickly give you an update on my point situation. So every time I decreased points, I took from Calamus because they're like doing pretty well last I checked, and then when I increased points, it just increased it for Serene. So for volume 1, I did the prompts try new magic because graphic novels make me very uncomfortable, and this was no exception. I didn't end up like rating this on Goodreads because I felt like I couldn't rate it because I have such subjective enjoyment of like the characters from having seen the show now, but I made the right call for me in not reading the like graphic novels until after I'd seen it because I just do terribly with graphic novels. Like I'm hard pressed to think I'll ever find a graphic novel that will be 5 stars for me. So I just didn't want to rate it because like it has all my love, but I would also feel weird giving it a 5 stars on Goodreads. So I just didn't rate it. Try New Magic surprised them. It was a graphic novel, so even if it's like longer page-wise, it was a really quick read. First Blood, I counted it as red on the cover, and then Send Spies, because queer representation all up in that business. For volume 2, I did Send Spies, same reason. In the Trenches continuous series, Surprise Them, same, and then Try New Magic, same. Then for volume 3, I increased points for Serene, so I did Grow Crops, which is green on the cover, Supply Run, so an author or set in a different country from you, Alice Oseman, and this book are both set in England. I am in America. Build a School, it's a YA, Rest Break, read it in one sitting, definitely did that. Medic Training, mental health or healing themes, the latter volumes definitely have that. Like the first couple volumes do have that, but especially with what happens with Charlie in the latter comics, I especially wanted to count it for that. And then for volume 4, Build a School, increase your population because Nick's dad played a large role in the 4th book, Supply Run, Medic Training, and Rest Break. So those are my prompts for the start of the week. Good stuff. That just like shot the number of books I've read this week through the roof because I just added 4 from the like hour and a half I spent. No, it was more like 2 hours reading the webcomic, but oh well. I had a great time. It's approaching noon on Monday and I just finished Breakfast of Champions by Vonnegut. My friend Andrew was like, if I recommended you a book, would you read it? And I was like, that depends if I have access to it. And he was like, well, I can lend you a copy. And I was like, then yeah, I'll read it. And the reason that he wanted me to read it was because he was like, this author writes strangely and I want to know what you think of it. He also never apparently actually finished the book. So he wanted me to tell him what happens. And then I hadn't realized at the time that it was a Kurt Vonnegut book. Then he handed it to me and was like, Kurt Vonnegut, that's why the author writes strangely, because it's Kurt Vonnegut. That's the whole point of Kurt Vonnegut. I've been wanting to read Vonnegut for a really long time because I had this sense that I'd probably enjoy it, but I've also been scared because I know that it's very nonsensical and satirical, and so I wasn't really sure how I'd react. I definitely plan on reading more Kurt Vonnegut in the future. Like, this didn't scare me away. I'm going to give this like a 3 stars. There were some parts I liked more than others. I think my favorite line was probably about how maple syrup is candy made from the blood of trees. I thought that was so funny. The whole point of this book is to be nonsensical, but in general, it's about this author, this science fiction writer named Kilgore Trout, who is invited to this arts festival. So he travels to the arts festival, and in the same town as this arts festival is this man who sells cars called Dwayne Hoover, and he's pretty quickly descending into madness, and he reads one of Kilgore Trout's books and then goes like on a rampage. Now that doesn't happen till like the end of the book, but it's talked about throughout the entirety of the book, so I don't feel bad spoiling that. It's also said on the back. This has lots of things to say. It was a banned book when it first came out. Kurt Vonnegut was considered to be very much part of a countercultural movement. There are some words in here that we wouldn't use nowadays, even in satire maybe. There were parts of this that were offensive or nonsensical, and they were supposed to be. Like, that was the point. I think there could be other plots or books of Kurt Vonnegut's that I liked more. I really enjoyed the ending of this one with the author's interaction with the main character of Kilgore Trout. It was just like overall an interesting read. It had illustrations. Don't try to make sense of this. It's not going to make sense. You're just going to go on this weird ride. And that's what I did. So I had a pretty good time doing that. Not getting the most points ever from this, but I'll give Serene some points to build a library, a book someone has been nagging you to read because Andrew wanted me to read this. Medic Training, a book that has mental health rep or healing themes. Definitely lots of talks about mental health in here. They talk about the bad chemicals in people's brains a lot, and I'm not sure I liked how that discussion was handled. On the other hand, it was satire, it was nonsensical. How much of it was meant in that way or the opposite of that way? You know, like it's a very fine line. And then Train New First Years, read an author new to you, because this is my first Kurt Vonnegut book. 6 points for Serene, but better than nothing. It's Tuesday, early afternoon, and this morning I finished reading The Phantom Prince. I forget who it's by, but it's by Ted Bundy's girlfriend. Not the one he married in the middle of a trial, but the one that he had before/during all of the murders. So quickly, let me give you a rundown of the prompts that I used. I used this to increase points for Serene, but the following prompts: make a technological advancement, because it was an ebook that I read. Take cover, a spooky book, because it was a little spooky, not gonna lie. Make an alliance, a book with a romance, because wasn't that the whole point of this book, was that it was about the romance between Ted Bundy and this woman. Listen to Elders, a nonfiction, and then Medic Training, a book with mental health or healing themes. There were both in that. There was discussion of alcohol abuse, and there was also a discussion about like healing from, you know, having been with Ted Bundy for so many years, I guess. This was really interesting. I gave this a 4. I definitely enjoyed this perspective on the Ted Bundy cases, and unlike The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, although this had that same personal quality to it of somebody who knew Ted Bundy, I say knew because it turns out that a lot of people really didn't actually know him because he was fooling them all. But even though it's the same in that aspect, it's a very different look. Anne Rule is a true crime writer, so she's looking at all the gritty details of the actual murders, and most of that is entirely left out. It's pretty much left with the experiences of this one person. And at the end, in this newer edition, her daughter wrote like an input because she grew up around Ted Bundy and she was healing and had some thoughts from that. Overall, it was just very interesting and like really disconcerting. Like, you always hear how Ted Bundy seemed like normal to people, but it's very weird to read about it from the perspective of a person who was like his partner at the time, and to see what was or was not weird, and try to imagine yourself in that situation. And like, it's very clear that Ted Bundy knew what type of woman this was and took advantage of that fact, and how like emotionally unstable she was at the time with the things that were in her life. Don't blame her at all for the ways that she reacted and stuff, but it was definitely an interesting read. If you want a twist on the Ted Bundy story, then I definitely recommend this one, especially if you maybe don't want to hear such gruesome details about the murders, but you just want to find out something new or a different perspective, then I'd recommend this. If you want all the details, I'd go to Anne Rule's book. I think that's the best for this. But Anne Rule does mention this book several times in The Stranger Beside Me, so I had to check it out, and I'm very glad I did. It was just fascinating for me to read from a psychological perspective. So I'm glad I gave that one a go. Happy Friday afternoon. Yesterday I finished a book, and then today I finished a book, but I haven't talked to you about either yet. So let's start with the one that I finished yesterday, which was Gods and Monsters, which is the last book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy. I give it 2 stars. I really did not like it. Like, I just did not care about it the whole time I was reading it. That's basically my review of it, because I didn't have any other thoughts, except that I did enjoy the epilogue, but the rest of it I was like, meh. I used it to increase points for Serene with the prompts: negotiate a ceasefire, enemies to lovers. Oh, that does remind me of the one thing that I have to say. This book is basically like the author decided our characters were better when they were in an enemies to lovers situation, and just being lovers is not good enough. So it has an amnesia trope so that they're at the same point in the relationship as they were in the beginning of their relationship, but in book 3, which was very weird, and I didn't like that at all. But it was very funny to me. It was like, you're backing your book so much by the enemies to lovers trope that you redo it for the same characters. That just got me. Build a Castle is a chunky book because it was like over 600 pages. Build a School, which is a YA or middle grade book. And I wrote that I'm kind of using this prompt for it. I'm gonna say it fits, because technically the way that this reads the content and contains, I would say that this is more new adult than YA. However, when Serpent and Dove first came out, it was being advertised, marketed as a YA book. At least that's what I remember doing it. And when I looked it up, that's what the internet said too. So I'm going to count it as a YA. And then Make an Alliance, a book with a romance. Again, enemies to lovers, so there was definitely romance. And then Make a Technological Advancement, because I listened to this on audiobook. Plus I'm giving myself the 10 extra points for a military fantasy, because it had those kinds of fighting vibes, so I'm counting it. Then I read August and Everything After, which is a YA contemporary book. I gave it 2.5 stars. It was not my favorite YA contemporary book. I appreciate that the author tried to have discussions about substance abuse, specifically opioid addiction, but it just didn't read well, the discussions on that. Like, I was like, what is happening? Additionally, I felt super disconnected from all of the characters. Things were just happening and I was like, what? And they were talking about like how incredible their chemistry was together. And I was like, what chemistry? It was very confusing. I didn't care about the characters, really. It wasn't a big deal, and it did have like musicians in it and like the band type trope, like a musician band made of musicians. And the female main character in this, she was the drummer, which was pretty cool. So I kind of enjoyed that element of it, and that's definitely like why I wanted to pick it up. Plus I'm just in a contemporary mood, but I'm using it for the prompts medic training, because it has lots of healing themes as well as mental health themes. So again, discussions about substance abuse, but then healing themes from like self-blame. Both of the main characters have like histories that they're trying to work through, so it's definitely got that. Increase Your Population, a book with a parent-child relationship or mentor-mentee. This does have discussions about the parent relationship between the main character and her mom. Also has discussions of her relationship with other adults, so I think that definitely counts. Build a School, it's a YA. Make an Alliance, a book with a romance, and then A Technological Advancement, because I read it on ebook, so I got +8 points for Serene. And that's what I've been up to. I'll tell you if I finish any more books this month. It's Saturday morning, and very technically very early this morning, because it was past midnight. I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. I used this for increasing points for Serene. Build a Library, a book someone has been nagging you to read. This was a birthday present from my mom, so I'm counting that. Rest break, read a book in one sitting. I did. It took me 9.5 minutes to read, so that's definitely one sitting. Medic Training, a book with mental health rep or healing themes. I definitely feel like this was just a healing type of book overall. Supply Run, a book with an author from a country different than yours. The author is from England. Train New First Years in the Academy, an author new to you. I've never read from this author before. So plus 11 points for Serene. Because it's Saturday, it's technically the last day of the readathon. So only books I finish today will count for this. So we'll see if I finish any more. It's Saturday afternoon and I just finished Perfect 10. I'm using it to increase points for Serene for the following prompts. Rest break, read a book in one sitting. I'm counting that because I started this morning and I just finished it. When I took a few minutes to like reset my brain before I continued reading, I didn't read any other book, and I usually switch between, so I just read this straight through with some like mental breaks in between, so I'm counting that. Medic Training, because it has some healing themes. Build a School, it's a YA book. Grow Crops, because there's plenty of green on the cover. And then Make an Alliance, a book with a romance. There are many romance in this book, so it definitely counts for that. So plus 10 points for Serene. Hooray! It's May 1st, which means Realmathon is officially over, so I just wanted to give you my final stats. For increasing points to Serene, I contributed 207. Decreasing points from Iskana, I did 47, and then decreasing from Calamus, 76. So I think that's pretty good, especially since I really only read like maybe 1 or 2 books specifically for the type of vibe of this readathon that would get the most points possible, and other than that I was just reading. I think I read like 30, maybe 31 books, so I'm definitely pleased with that. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below, did you participate in Realmathon? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!